This video is going to provide a brief introduction to the Observable and Aggregation Alerts, the Reactive Alerts, essentially, that we introduced into AdapTable Rx, which is the most recent version of AdapTable, launched in July 2021. We're going to do other videos in due course with further details, more comprehensive information about how reactive alerts and reactive queries work. But this one just is a nice introduction, just showing you how you can create them and some of the capabilities that are on offer. We're looking here at a public website. This is our demo site, and this is the Observable Alert demo, so you can kind of play with it yourselves and you can edit the alerts to sort of see what happens. So in fact here we have two alerts already, two observable alerts, and we also have flashing alerts on any number. In fact, let's delete these two alerts so we can recreate them, which will kind of hopefully be more useful. So let's create a new alert, and reactive alerts, whether observable or aggregation, have to work on a row. If the alert you want is just for some columns or for particular data types, then you use the more standard alerting. So now we come to the condition. You can use a predicate, which we've had since the start, and that is a nice easy way of creating an alert. Or you can do a Boolean query. That was the only expression type in AdapTable before AdapTable Rx, and it allows you essentially to create true-false queries, which will look at each row and then invoke an alert if the particular expression has been reached. But in this demo, we're going to create observable and aggregation. So let's start with observable. And as you can see, each observable alert has to have one of two main properties, arguments, either row change, which looks at each individual row in the grid, or grid change, which observes the entire grid. So we're going to look at row change, and you can see it tells you now it expects an argument to count max, min, or none. So in the first observable query we're going to write, we want AdapTable to tell us if in any row the item count column has changed 3 times. So that's what we're interested in, which means we need a count. So we do count, and that count function itself, and you can see we've got help here, we've got examples, you can link to more examples, and you've also got context sensitive support. So it's telling you it expects an argument of col, which is true because we need the item count. And then it needs to know what the count is. It says it expects a positive number. So we're saying 3. So we've now said, tell me if this item count column has changed 3 times in any row. And as you can see, there's a second element you need, and that's time frame. That is, and what period of time do we want to watch for? And for here, you can do hours, minutes, second. So we want to say in the last 5 minutes. So we will add a time frame, and you can see it accepts minutes, seconds, hours. So we want 5 minutes, and there's a nice little shortcut we can do where we do that. So there we are. Tell me if the item count has changed 3 times in the last 5 minutes. You can say what it would be. So we'll say, well, let's make this an information alert, and let's also show me a notification. So have a little toast pop up when it happens. There's no extra behavior we want. There's a summary of what we've created. So it's a row change with a item count of 3, i.e. this has changed 3 times in a time frame of 5 minutes. So there's our observable alert. And now we can see that works. So if we click this action button here, we created a couple of action buttons which update. So if I update this second row here, that's 1, that's 2. Now if I update the next row, 1, 2, that's fine. But now when I go back to the first row, this will now be the 3rd time in the 5 minutes. So there we are, it triggers the alert, and it triggers the alert. And if I update this one, again, we get the alert and we get the alert. Let's just make that a bit smaller so we can see it better. So let's do it, and then obviously 2, 3, it restarts and you get the alert again. So that's the first type of observable alert. And again, you can see them here, you can see them here, and you can also see them here as well if you want to, full information about everything. So let's clear our alerts, and let's now define the second observable alert. Again, it would be work on the whole row. Again, it would be an observable query we're interested in. But this time we want to say, tell me if it's the highest value. So again, we're going to do a row change, but now we want to do a max. We want to say, is this the highest? You can do if it's the smallest, you can do if there's been no change. That's very useful if, let's say, you want to know if, say, data's stale, but we want to know if it's the highest. So we do max, and again, this expects a col. This time we're going to look at the order cost column. And that's it, it doesn't need another argument. But again, obviously we need a time frame. So we want to say, let's say it's been in the last hour. So we do time frame, and same as before, we do our shortcut. And here we are, we say, tell me if this is the highest order cost in this row in the last hour. And that will work fine. But in fact, you can also see we've got here a little where. So another thing you can do is you can reduce the rows which are looked at. So instead of looking at every row, we can add a where clause, and this is a typical Boolean query. As it says, it narrows down the scope, and this is our standard Boolean query. So for instance, we say we're not interested in every row, we only want it where the employee is equal to Margaret Peacock. That's one of the employees in the dummy data which we use from Microsoft's famous Northern SQL Server database. So there we are. Again, let's this time make this a success. And again, let's show a notification. So you can see now it's green. You can change the buttons. You can make them look all kind of things. There's lots and lots of things you can do with alerts, which we'll look at in another video. But here we are. Behavior's fine. So there we are. We're going to have this summary, and we're going to say it's when the row change is the highest order cost in the last hour for a row where the employee is Margaret Peacock. So finish. And then you can see here, this increments order cost. Now, obviously, this one's going up, and it is the highest value. So why is it not triggering? Because it's not hitting the where clause, because that's Michael. This row here is Margaret. So as soon as I increment this one, there we are. I get my alert in all the different places. This would be fine. This is Margaret. So this is now the highest value. And again, do it again. It's now still the highest value because it's looking each time. If I was to make this 24, so it's gone down, now when I add it, we don't get the alert because obviously it's not the high, even though it's going up, it's not the highest value. If I make this 2,500, that change will also obviously trigger the alert. So now we're going to look at the next type of reactive alert in Adaptable, and that is the aggregation alert. And again, we're using the Adaptable demo site with lots of information about how aggregation alerts work. It's all publicly available. And let's actually change the theme here so that we can more easily distinguish between the two. So an aggregation alert, as the name implies, is one which looks at an aggregated set of data. So you tell it a specific set of rows that you want the query to examine, and then if the sum of those rows is invoked, it basically passes the query, then an alert fires. Again, it's probably easier to show than it is to explain. So let's create one now. Again, we have flashing alerts for numbers, but we're going to create the aggregation alert. Again, it's the whole row, and this time we go to the condition, and instead of doing an observable query, we will do an aggregation query. And as you can see, it only takes one main function, which is sum, and that expects an argument of column. So let's look at item count. And what we're saying is we want to say trigger if the sum of the item count does something. So for instance, tell me if all the item counts are greater than, let's say, 2,000. So we can do that, or we can use our shortcut and we can do that. And again, let's add a where clause to make it a bit more interesting. And like with observable queries, the where clause is a typical Boolean query, and in fact we'll use the same one. So we'll say where the employee is equal to, Margaret, I can't spell today, Margaret Peacock. So there's our query. Let's make this one a warning, and no, don't need any behaviour. So there we are. The sum of the item counts, so all the item counts are greater than 2000 in all the rows where the employee is Margaret Peacock. So we finish that now, we close it, and now we can make our alert run. And probably to make life easier, why don't we group on the employee column? So we can see at the moment that currently the sum for all the Margaret Peacocks is 1428. What that means is we have a little button here which increments by 50. So we notice that each time we increment, obviously the grand total goes up. And there we are, we hit 2000 and we got the alert. Let's go back in. Let's now configure that alert, and we will say that we want to have a notification. And again, you can change the button. So let's say we'll have outlined, and we will say hello for the button, just so you can see it's all live. So we finish that, we go in again, and again this is going to breach it, and there we are, we get our alert with hello. So that's aggregation alerts, and we saw observation alerts earlier. Two types of reactive alerts in AdapTable which trigger based on changes in data or based on sums of rows. Thank you for watching, and as ever, if you have questions, please get in touch.